This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.
Welcome to the Podcast Arcade at Comic-Con 2018. Woo!
Should we begin?
Shall we begin?
We should begin.
All right. So
once again, everybody, welcome to Comic-Con. It's a pleasure to be here to speak with you. Glad you all could make it. First thing up we usually do is we kind of say, hello, how's it going, kind of thing we go through. And how is it going?
It's
Have
going
you had
well.
a good show?
This con is going really well. I don't know. You guys having a good time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So many great people and creators and local, celebrities and local stuff. But yeah, I'm having a complete blast. How about you, man?
It's been an interesting time. This is the first time I've ever been at a con where I'm actually presenting and like being a person standing behind on the other side of the table. So it's been certainly a different experience for me.
Yeah.
But you're kind of old hat at this, but
Yeah, it's definitely like a attrition.
yeah. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and get going?
We've
got a couple things lined up.
Yes.
And the first thing is
recent sightings.
Is recent sightings.
Recent sightings. There's the squirrel cage. We have that segment as well. We're going to talk about that. Recent sightings for us, for Paranormal Dads. I came across this creature, this cryptid, not personally, I wish I had, but just doing some research online and also doing some other article reading. I came across a cryptid called the Fresno Nightcrawler. Has anyone heard of this thing at all? It's the legs.
Right.
So, Fresno Nightcrawler, if we go to the next slide on that one, is that the video?
This is going to be the video coming up.
The Fresno Nightcrawler, to give you a little bit of heads up, is a strange-looking alleged creature. So, the quick backstory on this was that there was a gentleman in Fresno, California, who was experiencing his dogs getting agitated and was getting irritated at this and decided to set up a camera at night to capture whatever was happening. He thought it was going to be people messing in his yard, something like that. He captures something on the camera that kind of defies logic, and I don't want to put any ideas in people's heads, so look at the video first, and then we'll go from there. But it's a very strange looking creature.
Okay.
And we'll go with the video right now. There we are.
So this is just a little intro video from where we got it. So credit to the Cryptid Countdown for providing us with the video.
So like I said, this gentleman had set up some security footage. These creatures were also sighted in Yosemite on a trail cam. So this wasn't even picked up on purpose. This was just something set up for just normal viewing. And they also saw these creatures. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen this.
And when you don't know what to expect and you capture something that you don't expect, it's very interesting. I believe this is the trail cam.
This is the trail one.
Yeah. So yeah, this was captured in Yosemite National Park. So this camera wasn't even really intended to pick up any creatures. It was just there as a way to kind of look at trails.
The first creature you're going to see, people estimate it's about 5 feet tall, and the other one is just under 2 feet. When I first saw it, kind of looked like a Muppet to me. Something you'd see on Sesame Street.
It's very interesting. And very stilt-like. I mean, the critical part of my brain is like, oh, it's a dude on stilts. But then you start doing that math in your brain, like, well, okay, that one's only 2 foot tall. There's not a person on top of those stilts. their span is such that I don't know. There's no knee bend. I don't know. There's a lot going on in this. Funky looking. Now, this was the newer one of the two. This was one of the original, which is why it's called the Fresno Nightcrawler. And the origination of this kind of thing. So it's fairly recent.
And the only other place anyone has reported seeing anything like this is in Poland.
Yeah.
No one has reported actually seeing these things in real life either. It's always been on the video cameras.
It looks like a disembodied pair of hammer pants. It really does. You literally can't touch this. We can get the lights on this. Thanks, Kaya. Use the glow sticks. Yeah.
Glow sticks.
And so this creature, reading up on it a little bit, there's actual stories of this within some Native American lore as well. There's some actual carvings depicting a creature with very long legs with a tiny little upper body / head. So it doesn't just stop at this current stuff. It actually does have some sort of connectivity to an older story of these types of creatures. There is everything from, and it's always something you have to leave on the table, this could be not real. It could be something that's not, it's faked on some level. Or on the other complete side of it, there are people who allege that these are actual entities that will allow themselves to be seen when they want to, kind of thing. Like, so these have the ability to camouflage, blend in, or even just make themselves kind of not be there when they want. Very kind of out there, but I've never seen anything like that in my entire life.
Some of the possible explanations that people give are an undiscovered species or a cryptid, a paranormal or supernatural creature, an extraterrestrial, a pair of white pants being puppeted.
It's hammer time.
Hammer time.
Yeah.
Or some type of mutation. So
a mutation of what? A Muppet.
What are they doing in Fresno that creates walking hammer pants?
No clue. The thing about this, like I said, is like there's no, like you get into things like chupacabra, it's like a monster dog, or you get into Bigfoot, it's like a bigger version of a thing that we can already identify. Like this goes to a thing that there's no reference for this.
Yeah, what do you compare it to?
Like, it's the most bonkers thing ever. If it is a prank, it's a pretty wicked one. Like, hey man, we should make a pair of pants, walk across the backyard, it'll freak people out. I just don't see it. But like I said, digging into it a little bit further, there were some Native American carvings and statues depicting these types of creatures that they go back hundreds of years. Even simple little like wood structures, like these long
trees that have been like shaped,
formed,
like
sculpted, them. And then a little head on top. So it's weird. It's funny. So file that away under the recent sightings for Paranormal Dads. But yeah, and I welcome any thoughts or stuff like that after we're done, too. Just share anything like that. So.
And with that, we'll move on to our next segment.
It's time for pop, culture, and the paranormal.
Pop culture and the paranormal is the segment that we use to kind of talk about something pop culture related to paranormal items, such as one episode we talked about Bigfoot and the $6 Million Man. We talk about movies and things like that. So this time, since we're at a comic book convention, we thought we'd talk about
comics and the paranormal.
The one thing that really stands out to me as far as comics books go are a set of comics that my mom bought for us. We used to go up to Minnesota in the summertime, and there were probably 6 kids in my family. They'd load us all into a van, and my mom would throw back into the back of a van a few packages full of these comic books. And they were put out by a company called Gold Key. Anybody familiar with the Gold Key comics? Fabulous artwork on these covers. They had a series called UFO Flying Saucers. And basically what they would be is you'd see an alien or a UFO or something, and then also humans just terrified out of their minds at what they are seeing. And just the artwork is just incredible. And the funny thing is, a lot of the artists went uncredited for this artwork, and we'll kind of show some of that. Yeah.
Some of the stories, or most of the stories that they did, actually came from UFO reports.
And that's what was different about these. These weren't science fiction. It was based on what is people believed to be true events, and which is something that just made them even more scary. So this first one, Kai, if you want to take the lights down a little bit, I want to kind of show off some of the artwork just so we can see it well. This is the one that really stood out in my mind.
That's nightmare fuel. That's all that is. You're a kid reading that on vacation?
I actually had this on the way to Minnesota. We were going up there to go fishing, of all things. And here's these two dudes that were out at the lake. You can see their fishing equipment laying on the ground. Yeah. One of them's already passed out.
Or
and he's
dead. Billy's dead.
He's being carried in there by this alien. There's another two little aliens kind of roughing up the other guy and dragging him into the flying saucer. If you're listening to the show, you can look this up. Just Google it, UFO Flying Saucers Gold Key covers. And just, this was the trademark of this series of comics. It would just show the terror that people had in their eyes.
He kind of resembles Archie. I'm just going to say it.
They kind of look like the Gamorrean guards from Star Wars in this one. You know, little shorter versions
little
of
pig
that.
Dudes. Get on the bus. I don't want to. You know, this art style is also reminiscent to me, and obviously they did this for the Back to the Future movie. But he had that comic Weird Tales. Right. And that's what scared his dad into asking Lorraine out to the dance. But the point is, each one of these covers had just a scary thing happening on the cover.
Here's another one.
Look at that. Your house is gone.
So everybody's running into the house for safety. Here come the aliens walking down the hill.
Right.
You know.
She's looking the wrong way. They're behind you. Look at that.
Now this is another one that gives you an insight as to the inside of what the aliens are looking at. It's like, oh, let's take this guy from down below. So they have a little targeting computer, and they can
heartburn gun.
They can pick them up. The interesting thing about these covers is they all kind of look a little different. Nowadays you think alien, you think the Greys.
Right.
You're thinking about the little gray men with the big eyes, and they all kind of look the same. Every one of these aliens have looked a little different so far. So back then,
they were based on the descriptions people gave of abduction reports.
Yeah.
Right. They all look a little different. And that was one of the cool things about these comics.
Like the dude at the bottom playing the Atari.
Here's another one. Again, you got all the mom and the kids down below, and you can kind of see it from the alien's point of view. It's like, okay, let's take these ones out.
Yeah. The art style is so fun, though. Like, this is such a throwback style that really kind of is that like the Art Deco style, or what is that phrase for this?
Well, it was these books were made back in the late 60s. It started in 1968 and throughout the 70s, and the colors were really rich, but even for then, I think they were kind of hearkening back to the 50s, and some of the sci-fi movies that came out in the 50s. Kai, you want to get the lights? So, can anyone else think of any comics that you remember, paranormal related? I know I have a couple examples. Here's one of ghosts.
You can pass those
Here,
around, too.
Yeah, you can see this hand coming up out of the ground and grabbing the poor dog, and this is an actual one from that UFO Flying Saucers.
I've got that one.
Yeah, that's a cool one. This is another one that a friend of ours brought over this morning. He knew we were going to be talking about this, but again, it's just kind of that retro look to it. But yeah.
The Gold Key, they also did Star Trek.
Right. Yeah, that was.
Same artwork, probably the same artists.
Yeah, and that was one of their big lines. Before Star Trek was really, Star Trek. Star Trek was still very new back then.
Yeah.
And they did have the rights to do the Star Trek. Do you really?
The four thick Gold Key comics.
They also did Ripley's Believe It or Not. They did. There was another one.
Wasn't Weird Tales an actual book? I remember it being a book. I might
It
be
could
off.
have been.
Yeah.
Could have been.
We did Dark Shadows. They did.
Boris Karloff was another one they did. They had some.
Twilight Zone, they a whole bunch of it done.
My
Yeah.
mom was she was a horror fan anyway, so she was a huge fan of these things. And when she got done with them, of course, my brother and I picked them up and read them. So that was probably some of our first,
The first comics.
First comics. And, we didn't care for Disney. We didn't care for anything like that. When we went to go see movies, it was, Mom, Dad, we want to go see the Poseidon Adventure. We want to go see Earthquake. We want to go see Airport. We didn't want to go see the other stuff.
It's crazy how a lot these books, like you were saying before, and like what you said, they were done in a way to be entertaining, but they were also drawing off of people's personal experiences as well, and off of accounts, and so that lent another air of creepiness to the whole thing. It was like, this is happening. I don't know.
And I think the artwork had a lot to do with it too. Those covers were just so telling, they just captured your imagination. And these comics would actually outsell DC and Marvel comics at the time, so they were kind of a big deal back in the day. So if you're out there on the floor and you're going rifling through books, you come across some of those, pull them aside and just kind of look through some of them, read some of the stories. Actually, some of these stories you can find online, and the entire comic book has been scanned in and are on websites totally for free. You can read through some of these stories. They're a lot of fun to look at.
Archive.org would have a lot of them.
Yeah, I've actually seen them there. So.
They're fun for kind of even just on a whole nother level as like art projects or inspiration for something. If you're someone working on a comic book or a story or anything in that, drawing off of some of this older material is such a neat way to kind of get re-inspired and stuff like that. I mean, I've used this for short stories and even podcast ideas. Thank you. Just a lot of this art and the stories behind it is really kind of just imagination fuel and nightmare fuel too. On that note, should we move on to
We'll move on to the next segment,
main,
which is always our main mystery.
And now it's time for the main mystery.
And once again, we thought, how many people here are from Council Bluffs?
and people from Iowa. Wow.
Seriously, no people from Council Bluffs here.
Omaha? All Omaha people?
Okay, Omaha people.
Oh, no,
well, let's
not
pretend we're all from Council Bluffs. And we're going to support the home crowd today. And so the main mystery today, we're going to talk about haunted places in Council Bluffs,
yep.
Iowa.
Yep.
So there's a number of places around, and if I know you've been to a few of them, and we'll talk about what you showed me earlier. Actually, the first place we're going to look at is called the Squirrel Cage.
Which is not a scary name.
No.
It's not a scary name. Ah, Squirrel Cage.
Kai, if you want to bring the lights down.
But yeah, its name does not do it justice because there's some history to this place.
But the Squirrel Cage is the old Pottawatomie County Jail. It was valid until, what, about 1969, I think it was?
Yeah, I think it was the late 60s, early 70s when they retired it as a prison. Yeah.
So what it was is it was a jail that allowed you could put in a number of different prisoners, and this one was special because it had 3 floors, and there was a handheld or a hand crank that they would do, and there would only be one entrance, and so these guys, their cells would always be facing the bars, and as they cranked it around, if they needed to get a certain person out, they would crank it around, and then eventually an open space would come.
Like a big gumball machine for prisoners.
And the prisoners could come out. There's been a number of different things that have gone on at this place, but probably one of the, well, maybe I should let you tell the story because you were there.
Okay. Basically, I was invited to go on a ghost hunt at the Squirrel Cage Jail back in February of 2013. So we get there, and fortunately, I had gotten to the place about 3 weeks earlier, so I knew where it was, which was a good thing because a bunch of our group didn't know where to go. So I basically rode in their car and took them to the place, and then everybody else followed. So we get there, and it's on Pearl Street, and about, oh geez, I think there was like maybe about 20 people for that ghost hunt, and everybody else was on the first floor. I went to the second and third floor and was doing what's called a baseline, basically taking photographs, and the photograph, one of the photographs, actually there was something in it which I didn't see with my own eyes at the time that I took the photograph, and that's this image right here.
We'll have to let that people see that at the end of this. There's basically a shadow person behind the bars, and if you look at the shape...
Actually, that's on the second floor going into the only working bathroom in the facility.
But it's basically just a completely black figure that you see, except for one hand is kind of exposed, and that's kind of like a grayish color. But take a look at his phone afterwards. It's a pretty disturbing picture when you look at it.
Picture until about a week later, when the head of the UNO Paranormal Society asked everybody who had taken pictures, take their SD cards out of their cameras, and we downloaded them to her laptop. She was looking through mine, and she comes up to me and she goes, "John, who the hell is this?" And I said, "I don't know who that was. There was nobody on. Everybody else was on floor 1." And there are several other photographs that correspond to this, that nobody was on floor 2 but me.
To give anybody a little bit, and just in case, I don't know if anyone knows this or not, but shadow people is that phenomenon when you see a black figure that is not a shadow. The room is either well lit or it's dimly lit, so there's not a presence of a bright light to cast a shadow, and there's a person shape in that room.
This room was very dimly lit. This picture is light blasted from the original.
Right, so it would make the shadow go away, not absorb.
Well,
right.
The picture was light blasted so that it showed up better. We did that at UNO. There have been several processes that will look at digital photographs. One using fractals, which was actually developed at UNO by the UNO UFO Club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they developed a special thing to tell whether or not an object has been inserted into a digital photograph.
Mm-hmm.
And my photograph was analyzed and found to be a thing.
I've heard about that technology because they can tell, like when you take a subject and you actually place it in, even using Photoshop, what it does to the pixels. It actually damages them in a way when you put an alien, a foreign object from a photo. The pixels around it.
Something in there, it'll tell.
Yeah.
Now, anyway, after a while, Squirrel Cage Jail contacted me because when we did the reveal, they wanted to have the photograph as so that they could put it on display. I said, sure, no problem. I was honored to have that done. And so they did it, and I think just recently, well, it was back in March, they asked, because they wanted to put the thing actually on one of those cards.
Yeah.
So they asked me, if I wanted that done, and I said, yeah. Again, I would be honored if they would, if they wanted to do that, no problem, because I wanted, as many people to see it as possible, because we don't know what it is. It's an actual photograph of something, and it's known that either a police officer or security guard had died at the Squirrel Cage Jail.
Yeah, there was one. He was like the jailer. There was a jailer who lived there.
Right. He lived on the fourth
and
floor.
they believe he might be the one who's still roaming the halls.
Well, the photograph here shows a gentleman wearing a police officer's uniform, because they've got on the one side where the hand is. Mm-hmm. It's much more defined than on the other side, and you can see what look like patches. And they did, the Squirrel Cage actually did some research and found that the patches correspond to patches worn by police and sheriff's deputies from the 1930s to the 1940s.
That's cool.
That's interesting.
So the Squirrel Cage is actually open for tours. You can go there. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. They have set times that you can actually go and explore this place. So if you're ever interested in taking a little excursion yourself, come on over to the Squirrel Cage. Our next stop is going to be Fairview Cemetary. And this is where you can find the Black Angel. Even though this picture probably doesn't do it justice, this angel is actually a dark color. It was created in honor of, what's her name?
I've heard stories of this thing. I have never gone there. I'm not born or raised here, but when I moved here, that's like one of the first few things someone had told me. You need to check out the Black Angel, you'll be scared to death.
The statue is a memorial of Ruth Ann Dodge, who died in 1916. Just days before her unexpected passing, Mrs. Dodge told her daughters of an angel who kept appearing to her in her dreams. To honor their mother's memory, the angel statue was sculpted in bronze in 1920. Since then, the figure has turned black. Legend has it the angel is cursed. So if you look into her eyes at midnight, they say, prepare for death to soon follow. So I wouldn't recommend that to anybody here. You know,
that's not. There is no like gray area in there at all, is there? There's not. Have a really bad day.
One of the other things, one of the other rumors is that if you hang out with her too much, you can become ill too.
Oh.
So that's kind of her claim to fame, but. The Dodge family is, as we'll soon find out, was well known. He was General Dodge, had his residence here in Council Bluffs, and what was it? Probably Civil War era general. So they were pretty well off. Had a very fancy mansion in Council Bluffs, which you can still tour to this day. So, has anyone ever been over to see the angel? You have?
Handful.
So.
Where's the Fairview Cemetery?
The Fairview Cemetery, it's located, let's see if I got the address here. Sorry, it's not on the slide. It's actually at Lafayette North 2nd Street here in Council Bluffs.
There you go. Know where you go. Go check it out tonight, guys. Let us know.
Just don't go around midnight.
Do you know where the phone building is on Gainesville?
No.
Oh, okay.
Gainesville's like main downtown, right? Yeah, it's right in the heart of the city.
There's a historic street that runs from Kingsville to the north. I think it's 4th Street. It goes uphill, and at the top of the hill is Fairview Cemetery.
Is it in Omaha or Council Bluffs?
It's Council Bluffs.
Oh, okay. Never mind. There's a Lafayette in Omaha, so.
Okay. So the next one, since we're talking about the Dodges, we're going to go over to the General Dodge house. This is where Ruth Ann lived and the General Dodge lived. This is at 605 3rd Street. And General Dodge, he lived there. He did not die in this house, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
But they say that sometimes people will die in other places, yet their ghost will haunt, maybe someplace that they have lived.
That makes sense. I mean, if it's important to that person and they wanted to kind of like, not leave it, I get it.
But apparently, an apparition of General Dodge has been seen numerous times by visitors in the house. He's in the form of a ghostly shadow walking the hallways of the residence. Also, the smell of fire has also been reported, or possibly the smell of smoke.
Really?
I don't know. If fire has a smell? Does fire have a smell?
I smell fire. Smoke? No.
Usually it's smoke that you smell. But
Fire does have a smell.
Depends on what's burning, I guess.
So another strange occurrence that might happen there, if you stand in the middle of the street at dusk, some say you can hear the ghostly sound of two men arguing. And also there's like orbs you can see inside the window.
Really?
Yeah, so, that's interesting. They say it's at dusk, though. It could just be the sun reflecting off the windows at that time of day. It's if they're facing west.
I will say, if you stand still anywhere long enough, you'll hear two people arguing.
But what
especially in my house.
What you don't want to do, though, is stand out in the middle of traffic.
Right.
So if you're going to stand out in the street, be sure there are no cars.
If you're really quiet, you'll hear cars honking at you.
All right, next we're going to go to the Union Pacific Railroad Museum at 200 Pearl Street. The UP Museum has been completely restored and renovated, but it was once the town library. Locals say that in the basement, books would often fly off the shelves and shadowy figures have been seen.
Yes.
So we're talking Ghostbusters here.
Yes, we are. Every town needs a haunted library. Bottom line.
Also, items would disappear only to turn up again later in the same place. The ghost is believed to be a former pianist who kept to herself except when she took quiet strolls through the streets of Council Bluffs. Today, her ghost is most often seen walking up and down the museum stairwell.
You're there to get some books. You're just trying to chill. Then you look around, there's a ghost just going up and down stairs. I mean, it's just...
And then Ray Parker Jr. jumps in and...
Yes, exactly.
You hear the Ghostbusters thing.
You know, wait, listen, do you smell that?
So has anybody visited any local... I mean, we can even open this up to Omaha because we had a lot of people from Omaha here, but any local hotspots as far as ghosts or
Activity
anybody done any kind of... Yeah.
Jocelyn Art Museum, the old section.
And I've heard that about Jocelyn as well.
I saw a shadow person in the basement.
I've also heard of a shadow person at Sokol Hall, if you've ever been to Sokol Hall.
Oh, really? Yeah, they have
Yeah.
a Czech festival there. I haven't seen anything, but...
So,
What's the one park in Omaha that has the stairs?
Hummel Park.
Hummel Park.
That is very haunted.
Is that the place with the slides? Like the stairs and the slides? Yeah.
They got slides at Hummel?
Staircase
Okay.
there that, when people count the stairs, it's never the same number twice.
That's
what I've
another
heard.
weird thing you hear about Hummel.
Yeah.
That's so tough.
So, and then also here in Iowa, not very far, just to the south of us, is and I'm going to butcher the name, is it Villisca? The Villisca Axe Murder House.
Oh.
A commonly known axe murder took place in this house. An entire family was murdered.
Isn't that Council Bluffs?
No, it's Villisca. It's like
Okay.
southeast.
Red Oak.
Okay.
It's probably about 50 miles from here.
I came here late, so I don't know if you talked about this already, but the Squirrel Cage Jail?
Yeah,
We did. That was our
the
first one.
That was the
we
first
spoke
one.
about. This is the.
I've been there. The person there said that people would smell this pungent smell and it's the ghosts of the prisoners there, but really it's because there's a lot of urine stains. Urine over time crystallizes and it still smells.
It's just kind of.
So it's just, that's a little bit debunked myth, but it's for a long time people were like, I can smell the prisoners still.
If you
And it's
take anything
they
away.
just never clean the urine.
Urines can become
I've been
crystals.
there.
Yeah.
That's a photograph I took in 2013.
So, but anyway, yeah. So if you're ever looking for a good time, especially around Halloween, the Omaha area, Council Bluffs area, there's groups that put on guided tours of haunted places around town, and it's always a lot of fun.
Fremont does
even
that
if you have
too.
older kids and you want to take them out, it could be a good time for them. I'd avoid taking the little ones, but it could be a lot of fun.
Or you can go UFO watching, or even do the Bigfoot thing that we did. But
Go down to
but
Fontenelle
there's a lot
Forest
of There's a lot of Fontenelle.
So,
So I guess at this point we'll probably take any questions
We'll take it
anybody
up for
has, whether
questions.
about any of this or about paranormal stuff in general. Yeah.
Did you see a Sasquatch?
Ooh.
we did not.
That's a good question.
We did not see one. We heard some strange noises, but that was probably as close as we got.
There's a howl and
Smells, nothing to
no smells, and this is where it's interesting because you really we said before, we ride that weird line between total belief and debunking everything, and that's no fun either. And the experience we had, at least for me, left me kind of still really not tilted either way. But there's this one specific noise that we had heard, and I went on this coyote listening spree for weeks afterwards because a friend of ours, I'm like, man, we heard this really weird howl. I've never heard anything like this in my life. Not that I'm this huge outdoorsman or anything, but I've heard several, animal howls, and this one was very unique. And then he's like, it's coyotes. I'm like, really? Because it didn't sound dog-like or anything. Nope, coyotes, they make weird noises. So I went on this crazy, week-long binge of listening to coyote howls on YouTube. And they sound weird. I mean, they even sound like little kids and babies. They have weird noises, but nothing sounded like this.
And
howl.
we did hear plenty of coyotes when we were out there. We were doing, it's pretty much run we were out there with the BFRO, and it was pretty much run like, the show Finding Bigfoot.
It was very much like
we were down in the Ozarks when we went on ours.
make a suggestion. Look on YouTube for barred owls.
Okay. This
And
was.
They make some very, very strange.
I'll have to listen to it because I'm open to anything. So far, nothing has tilted me, but it was the noise, and then we also at one point had a sizable rock hucked at us, and it's one of those things that happens, and your brain starts doing things like, okay, that could have been a person. All right, well, I'm being actively lied to, and like I don't like to go straight there because that's like then it's like, okay, well then that's why am I even here? And even getting into that, like where we were was random. Like we didn't tell anybody where we were going. It wasn't like we had mapped this out. There was none of that. And so you start getting into the logistics of trying to fake that. They've got 10,000 people in the forest. It's like, no, it doesn't make sense. And as I started stripping away different like logical breakdowns, I'm like, something just threw a large rock at us, and I don't have an answer what that is.
And that was a time when the three of us went off together on our own. So that was really kind of weird.
We didn't tell them we kind of broke protocol.
It was kind of like we were down underneath the bluff, so there was high ground above us. It wasn't like we were just walking in the woods and all of a sudden a rock came whizzing by our heads or anything.
Yeah. It was interesting though. Yeah, it landed.
It was weird. We were on the Missouri side. Yeah. We were right. I mean, we were like right on the border.
My grandma lived down there when I was a kid. You should look up nocturnal mountain lion sounds too.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm open. I'm open to pretty much, yeah, but this was, a couple of weird things, and the experience itself was cool. I mean, I'd never been like that remote in the dead of night and just seeing literally like the Milky Way and just all sorts. It was a fun experience either way you slice it, but a couple of weird things.
Incredibly dark out there at night. You watch these shows like Finding Bigfoot and stuff. It's like, what do you expect to see walking around there in the dark? Because Bigfoot could be standing right in front of you, and I couldn't even see my hand in front of my own face.
We almost walked off a ravine at one point.
Yeah.
There you go, Paranormal Dads.
This is kind of random, but have you ever heard of the Fresno Nightcrawler?
That was the first thing we talked about.
What's happening? Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, that's amazing. Like that's just a random little tiny.
But I just like there's so many videos of these things. Like, how do you explain that? It's great.
Yeah. We actually just watched the video.
We'll fire it up again for you before you leave.
Want to watch it again,
that was. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's a synchronicity thing right there. Look at that. That's so like out there. It's funny you dialed in on that. Yeah.
What for each of you, and Andy's not here, but what is your favorite paranormal subject?
Ooh, I'll let you go first. I think I know what it is, but
I'd probably have to say Bigfoot. For me, I mean, growing up, and for me, a lot of it kind of relates to the pop culture kind of side of it. I grew up in the 70s, and so you had Bigfoot on $6 Million Man. You had Bigfoot in the movie theater. There were actually quite a few movies in the 70s with Bigfoot as the focus. So that was probably
Monsters was one of the movies.
Right. Yeah, that was a very good one.
Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, and that was probably one of that was probably the one that really tripped it for me. Kind of piqued my interest. But I'd have to say it was Bigfoot would be mine.
Yeah, and yours is like culturally and paranormal, and it goes all sorts of weaving in. Mine, I have ridden mostly a skeptical line for a lot of my life, and only in the past 10 years or so that I kind of start leaning a little bit more towards that's kind of strange. When things happen to you outside of what you can kind of explain, when your senses fail you eventually, you kind of start questioning things. And I had a series of... I had an experience, and I shared this on the podcast a few episodes back, but I'll share it here too. What tilted me back, I called it the tap, and everything in my life was fine, nothing was weird, I wasn't experiencing abnormal stress, but I would go to bed at night, and I started hearing rhythmic tapping right on the wall, right by my head, when I would lay down, right by my head, just like that. And every time it was like 5 taps. Yeah, just like that. It was 5 every time. And I got to the point where I counted them. And I'm like, what is happening? And it was enough that as I started to fall asleep, you're laying in bed, you're doing the parent thing where you're going over everything in the day, and tomorrow I got to do this and this and this. And as I'm going through, I start drifting off to sleep. And as soon as I started to get to the edge of sleep, the tap would wake me up. No. And it happened enough times that I started to kind of like dread it. And it was weird, like it's a tapping. And it was almost like that Edgar Allan Poe poem. And I'm like, what? Am I going insane? Is this how people go crazy? Because I think I'm going crazy. And so I laid down, and it sounds so weird. And I realized I'm probably like throwing out my credibility, whatever, I don't care. It happened for real. So I laid down and I got sick of it. I was like, it was going on for a couple of weeks, like several times during the week. And so the tapping resumed, and I did do the debunk thing. Like I go outside, I look at my house, and there's like no trees near my house at this time. This is in my old house, no trees, no nothing. I live on my bedroom is on the second story. Someone's got to be on a ladder tapping on the wall on the outside rhythmically. I mean, so many levels to that doesn't make sense. And right by my head, like, I can tell it's happening right there. So finally, I just got fed up, and I just said, stop it. I just uttered the word, stop it out loud, be done. I'm just over this, and it stopped. It stopped, and it never happened again.
Did your wife hear it?
She would be dead asleep. My wife goes to sleep in 2 seconds. She lays down, and I'm looking over at her like, do you hear this? And she's dead asleep, and I'm like, great, she doesn't hear this. I told her about it, and every time, like, she'd be like, I'm going to stay up and try to listen to this, and every time she'd fall asleep. It was like a movie. I'm like, oh, she's never going to hear this, and I mean, she believes me. I wasn't just making it up for anything, but it was the strangest thing I've ever had like happen, like on a real like base level, and then I just kind of just vocally reached out, and it just stopped. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That's going in the bucket there. I don't know what to do with that one. So for me, it's probably ghosts. That's the thing that really kind of like, and I'm not sure like intelligent ghosts or just a residual thing. I don't know, but it fascinates me because I don't have any reason to understand what that was all about, other than me losing my mind, which is still on the table. But and I think if we had to guess what Andy's was, I bet you he would say like reincarnation's probably one of his big like.
Yeah, I would guess definitely reincarnations or ghosts or spirits.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something on that vein.
So
watch us be dead wrong. He's like, no, it's the Baba Yaga.
No, it's Loch Ness Monster.
Loch Ness Monster, dummies. I love that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we're getting towards the end. Any other questions here? Any other experiences anybody wants to throw out there? Oh,
sure. I had twice. One in Hershey, Pennsylvania. There's an old farmhouse. It's like a kids' school for like kids who were, from bad homes and all that.
Yeah.
My parents were house parents, and there's a section for our family, and it was over 100 years old, I guess. Farmhand died there, and somebody committed suicide down in the basement there. But one night I was sleeping in there, and all of a sudden I got like pressure on my chest, something like sniffing all over me, and I was paralysis. I couldn't move at all. And that happened multiple times.
Really?
How old were you?
Probably about 23.
Oh.
So, and the second time was here at the Soto. I was camping, and it happened the same exact thing. On the ground camping, same exact scenario.
That is crazy. Have you looked up sleep paralysis?
I looked it up.
Yeah.
But, I mean, old hag syndrome. I don't know, but then the noises.
Yeah.
And then the pressure, like feeling something on top of me.
And you're awake.
Nice.
I'm awake.
Wow. That's going to be on the next episode. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
That is.
Well, and that's a situation that you read a lot about, in ghost experiences. People feeling pressure on them, either, running a finger up somebody's foot, or, just the pressure on your chest, and people actually feeling stuff when they're laying in their bed. It's creepy.
It's probably
yeah.
like. That's probably what they're describing, like, a nightmare sitting on your chest, because it's supposed to be like, if you have a nightmare, it's because, like, either, like, a demon or, like, a horse is, like, sitting on you, like, that is the, like, legend or something, but that may have, like, been inspired by that kind of experience.
My goodness.
That's crazy.
On that note, go forth. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to look this stuff up, comment, share your stories with us on Facebook. We're on Twitter as well. Also,
we've got some cards up here that have our contact information. If you want to listen to our show, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean. Take a listen.